In today's video, I'm going to be going through what's the number one way to launch or relaunch, depending on where you're at, your online fitness business so that you can come out the gate with success, as much success as possible. And as I mentioned, this is for you if you haven't launched online yet, or you have launched online, you haven't really seen the successes you wanted, and you feel like you've kind of screwed it up, how to relaunch online and get the most success possible as well. Now, I'm going to pre-frame this, and it is an important question, a question I get asked regularly. It's quite a common one. And I'm going to pre-frame this to say that there are certain ways that I guess, well, first and foremost, what is the ideal outcome that most people are looking for when they launch, right? Whether they have been working on their business and they're too scared to launch because they don't want to screw it up. I generally get this question from those people, and they kind of like stay in the starting blocks and never get out of the gate because they're just worried. They've done all this work, but they're worried they're not going to launch it in the right way possible, and then it's all going to go to waste. Alternatively, they did launch and they just heard crickets, right? And they're like, I must have done something wrong. How am I going to redo this? So this is generally when I get this question. Now, first and foremost, I guess what I do want to say is, yes, the ultimate outcome for most people when they do launch is that they do the work, do whatever it is, then they take it to market, they launch it, and they have great success, get loads of clients, get a lot of cash flow coming in, a lot of sales and new clients, right? And that's the ultimate outcome, of course. Now, the biggest, and I'm going to take you through how to do that. Now, the biggest failure or biggest mistake I see most fitness experts, personal trainers, online coaches make around the launch is thinking that it is this stage in time in your business that is just so important and so critical, and if you stuff this up, everything else explodes, right? And I've spoken to a lot of trainers who launch and they're like, oh, and it didn't launch really well, so then I just put everything on hold until I could figure out what happened and maybe relaunch in like a year or two. So what I want to do first and foremost is say that the launch, and I'm going to take you through how to be successful with the launch, but the launch is there's not a start and end date to it, if that makes sense. There's not this critical point in time that if you screw this up, everything past that, if this point in time fails, everything after that is a failure, right? So what I want to do is take the pressure off the launch period for those people that build up this massive pressure, and that's what causes them to never go live with it. And I want everyone to look at their business in this way, right? It's not about how many clients and how much success and how much money you make at your launch, right? Now, you can have an amazing launch, you can have a sucky launch, right? But the better thing between that, whether you have a great launch, whether you have a terrible launch, the most important thing is how is your success over the next 2, 3, 5, 10 years, right? And what I mean by that, let me give you this example. Someone, Trainer X comes out, launches, does $100,000, right, in the first week. Phenomenal, right? Killer launch. Does $10,000, does $20,000, whatever it might be, right? Really good launch, everything's successful, and they're feeling great. And then after that, they hit crickets. And the next 5 years, they're lucky if they do another $100,000 over the next 5 years. Like, that's failure, right? Because it's like, you can have this amazing launch, but if you can't continue the success past that, then you don't have a great business. Now, Trainer B, let's just give this as an example, goes to launch and does 1,000 in sales and clients, right? But then from there, over the next 5 years, goes on to do $1 million, $2 million, $5 million, right? Which one's more successful? Which one would you prefer to be? So the point I'm making, of course, we would all like to launch and do $100,000 and then over the next 5 years do $5 million, right? That would be the ultimate outcome. But the point I'm trying to make is don't put the pressure shouldn't be on the launch. It should be on what happens after the launch for the next 5, 10 years, because effectively we all want a business that gives us consistency, predictability, impact and income over a long time, right? Because let me tell you, doing a launch and making $100,000 and then nothing thereafter, that ain't helping anyone, right? So you're better off taking the pressure off the launch, getting it out to market in the right way, which I'm going to take you through in a sec, and then having something set up and putting really all your focus and all your energy to what happens after the launch, right? Now, what I mean by that is I see a lot of people who spend so much time building up to the launch and doing all the marketing and get everything ready, and it's just this one-time thing, right? And they launch, does well, right? They spend all this energy, all this time, all this focus to the launch, and then thereafter, they haven't spent any time or energy on the strategy thereafter, what's called evergreen, what's going to continue to get clients day in, day out, week in, week out, month in, month out thereafter. Because they got so consumed on the launch, right? And what I mean by that is I speak to some people and they're like, oh, I hired a videographer and I'm going to do this launch special and it's going to be 60% off for the first 202 people. I'm going to do all these giveaways. I'm going to do this, da-da-da. And then they launch and it's like, all right, cool. So how much time and energy you spend on doing ads or you're doing your funnel and your evergreen stuff that's going to work every week thereafter? And it's like, oh, cool. So all those video and all that stuff you did, you now throw in the bin because you did your launch and you can never use any of it again, right? That's not beneficial. That's not smart, right? Ultimately, we all want to do stuff once and be able to use that for life, and it continues to bring us value. That's the ultimate outcome and the ultimate leverage for a business owner and entrepreneur and what we're all looking for. So I'm going to pre-frame and I'll get back to how to do the best launch. But what I want to do is pre-frame to say that, hey, don't get too consumed in your launch, right? If you can go to market and I'm not a huge fan of trying to build a launch offer, launch marketing, launch funnels, launch advertising, launch da-da-da, because I've been there and done that. I've had businesses where I would have effectively challenges or launches, and maybe that might be 4 or 6 times a year. And I've had other businesses that just get clients every single day. And let me tell you, the ones where you're building up towards some type of launch and you're creating all this sort of stuff, and it's like, I don't know, a Christmas launch, a Easter launch, a summer launch, whatever it might be. And then as soon as that period's gone, you got to kind of throw everything you did in the bin and then work on the next thing, right? Whereas if you spend all that time and energy on building something that just works in every week, every month, doesn't matter what time it is, what season it is, what holiday it is, whatever it is so much less work and so much more fruitful. So I'm not a huge fan of trying to build launch marketing assets, right? And I much prefer everyone to be spending their energy and time on what's going to feed them for life and what's called evergreen, stuff that stays green forever, evergreen, right? And continues to work week in, week out. Now, that aside, if you can prioritize your evergreen stuff and what's going to work, and then like put 80% of your time and energy to that, and maybe 10 or 20% of your energy and time to your launch, then fantastic, right? And the best way to do a launch, which I'm going to take you through in a sec so you can have the most success. Now, once again, I'm not necessarily a fan of launch like discounts and offers. I feel like they can devalue your service, which you don't want to do, and it can then impact your sales thereafter. But you can do them effectively. I usually like to say that if you're going to do a launch and it's got some special reason that you do a discount or an offer or whatever it might be that's different to the norm, then make sure you're asking for something in return. And that means that you don't reduce the perceived value of your product or your service. What I mean by that is, like, you might be like, oh, hey, I'm going to do 20% off. Don't ever do much. I'm going to do a 20% off launch offer for the first 10 people, right? Have it as a limited format. Always do it as high ticket, and I'll get to that why in a second. And I'm doing this for the reason of launch and looking to get 10 new testimonials to then use that for marketing for the product ongoing. So anyone of these 10 that come in and that I give a 20% discount, you must also guarantee that once I get you to your your goal, you'll send me a 60-second video testimonial taking me through your journey, your results, so on and so forth, and I'm going to use that in my marketing. So by giving something, but then asking for something in return, you're not devaluing your service, right? And it's just a general technique used in negotiation. You never give without getting. Otherwise, people are like, well, why are you just giving? It mustn't be of much value, right? So that works really well, and it doesn't devalue the service. Now, ultimately, how best to launch? Having something like that, some offer like that is a reason to believe, a reason for, works well, right? And you want to utilize all of the assets that you have in terms of your audiences where possible. Right now, organic is getting tighter and tighter, less and less people are seeing what people are posting, and it's only getting worse and worse, but you can still use it. So what I mean by that is email lists, any social media platforms you've got, any people that you know that have social media platforms that might want to share what you're doing, you can bring them into it. You can give them some, revenue share of any sales they make. But ultimately, I much prefer to do that plus some format of paid advertising to make sure it gets more reach. Because not many of us have, 10,000 engaged ideal client social media audiences, right? So most of us have fairly limited, and of those, most of them are not our ideal clients. So not many people are going to see your offer. Now, I do have 4 different techniques. These techniques absolutely pump for a launch. It's one called a survey siphon, one called a word of mouth explosion. I've also got a hit list technique and another one, name escapes me for the time being, that I give to all my clients. And these pump, they work really well. I have used them in over 400 businesses, and it's literally unique to us. And we've proprietary worked these techniques out over the last 5-6 years in, business doing $50 million all the way down to businesses doing $500 a month. You know what I mean? And they absolutely crank. They pump time and time again. Now, these techniques I give to all my clients. They work really well. If you are interested in any of these sort of techniques, you can send me a DM, and I'm more than happy to take you through what they are. We've got some free trainings on some of them as well that I could give you some templates. So if you want that, you can DM me, or you can email through chris@tribefit.co. And really, it is about making sure you have everything packaged up in the right way, ready to go, right? So there's usually, with a launch, there's like a pre-launch sequence to warm people up, get them excited. It's not just about just waking up one day and just putting out a post. The ultimate launch usually looks to be like a pre-launch sequence, which warms people up, gets them ready for it. The launch sequence, and then there's a post-launch sequence. Right now, I'm not going to get too complex here, but that's what a perfect launch looks like. Usually it's like a 7-day warm-up, pre-launch. A launch usually goes for about 3 days, and then a post-launch or what's called like a second chance usually goes for like 7 days thereafter. Now, once again, if any of these are interesting to you, you can contact me and I can take you through more detail. I don't want to complicate the process just yet, but we're talking about big launches here. Now, if you have a small product, a small audience, and you'd be happy just to get a couple of $1,000s in clients in the first week, then that can be very simply done. But if you're looking to do I've done launches up to like $500,000 in 3 days. So, in 3 days of the sale period, 7-day warm up, and then the final 20% in the 7 days post-launch. So there's some real complicated strategies, advanced strategies you can do, but that's more for people that are looking to do massive numbers and who have a business in place already that allows them to be able to tap in to do those sort of massive numbers. But I would say for the most common people, and most of the everyday person like myself, really, if you're doing high ticket and you're charging anywhere between $1,500 to $5,000 per client, you're really looking to, like a successful launch for most people would be anywhere from $2,000 up to $20,000, right? That would be a successful launch, cash flow. Then you get clients coming in, and then you can funnel a portion of that money you've made. Let's say 20% of the money you've made. Let's say you do $10,000, funnel $2,000 back in to then feeding with advertising, and then you're off and racing. And that's really it. And that's the point I'm trying to make of, don't think the launch is what needs to feed you for the rest of your life. The launch is just there as a step to go to market, get validation, get some clients, get some cash flow, so you can take a portion of that and then feed that back into paid ads, which is what's going to feed you every day for life, right? The most important part from there. But that's generally how I like to tell people to approach launches. And once again, if you're charging high ticket, do not do low ticket. If you're going to do a launch, I see people do it time and time again, and they're like, got a $20 product or whatever. Cool, you'll sell 5 of them if you're lucky, and you just made $100. Well, that's, cool, but you've spent a lot of energy and time to make $100. Let me tell you, you probably made a loss, right? Whereas if you're charging high ticket and you get, rather than 5 sales at $20, you get 2 sales at $2,000 each. That's $4,000, very high cash flow, very high profitability. And then you can feed that back into your marketing and advertising thereafter to double that, triple that, quadruple that, 10 times that, and go again and go again and go again. And that's effectively the most important part. So hopefully that makes sense. Depending on where you are, what stage you are, if you've got any questions for me, feel free to reach out. You can DM or email chris@tribefit.co. I'm more than happily talk to you about that. And like I say, depending on where you are, whether you're looking to do a launch for like $2,000 to $20,000 or a launch for like $500,000, I can definitely help you out depending on where you're at, on what end of the spectrum you are. So feel free to reach out. That's it from me. Bye for now.